An elderly couple was tied up, brutally beaten, tortured, and then murdered with a knife. The perpetrator must have had a significant grudge against the two victims to commit such heinous acts. However, the person responsible for this horrific crime was none other than their granddaughter. She, along with her lover, murdered the very people who raised her. You didn't miss here. This is a true story that happened in Lawrenceville, Georgia, in 2017. What could have driven these children to be so ruthless? Or is there something else hidden behind this? You are following a true story. Let's uncover the dark secrets and thrilling details you've never heard before. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel to explore today's story with us. Lawrenceville, a small town in Georgia, USA, is known for its tranquil beauty. Located about 30 miles northeast of downtown Atlanta, with a population of about 30,000, it is a desirable place to live due to its low crime rate and friendly community. However, this case has shrouded the town in tension and fear. On April 6, 2017, Sarah, the daughter-in-law of Randall and Wendy, became worried after not hearing from her parents-in-law for several days. Her husband was away on a business trip. The parents only responded to text messages, but refused to video call. Moreover, their replies were brief and uncharacteristic of their usual way of communicating. Feeling that something was wrong, Sarah contacted the local police department, reporting the unusual lack of communication and requesting a welfare check at the couple's home in Lawrenceville, Georgia. The next day, police visited Wendy and Randall's home. At first, there were no signs of forced entry from the outside. The front door and windows were securely closed, and the yard was tidy, showing nothing unusual. When no one answered the door, the police left. They returned later that afternoon and the following morning to check again, but still found no response. On April 8th, noticing the suspicious situation, they decided to enter the house by breaking a ground floor window. As soon as they entered, a strong foul odor hit them. The house was quite messy and eerily silent. The police proceeded further inside. In the bathroom, they found the body of a woman lying on the floor with her hands tightly bound with duct tape behind her back. Blood stains and bits of duct tape were scattered around. In the bedroom, a man was found in a similar state. Blood soaked the bed and splattered across the walls, even reaching the ceiling. The heavy decomposition of the bodies and the smell suggested that they had been dead for several days. Police immediately cordoned off the area to begin an investigation. The two victims were identified as Wendy Bjorg, 63, and Randall Bjorg, 66, a married couple. The autopsy revealed that Wendy had 17 stab wounds, 5 of which were fatal, inflicted on her chest and abdomen. Her throat had been slashed deeply enough to sever the carotid artery. She also showed signs of being assaulted before death, with bruises on her face and arms. Randall, found on the bed, had 23 stab wounds to his chest, back, and abdomen. His throat was also slashed in a brutal manner. His left ribs showed signs of fracture from a heavy blow, likely from a tire iron. The time of death for both was determined to be the night of April 1st. The crime scene was horrifying. The victim's home had been ransacked, with belongings strewn everywhere. Many valuable items, such as cash and jewelry, were missing. However, the front door and rooms were sealed tightly with caulking material, indicating the perpetrator's intent to conceal the smell of the bodies. Additionally, in the living room, police found a tire iron, showing signs of use as a weapon, and several blood-stained knives scattered from the living room to the bedroom. In the kitchen, there were rubber gloves stained with both victims' blood. Rolls of duct tape used to bind the victims were also found scattered on the floor. Forensic reports concluded that the perpetrator not only intended to murder, but also attempted to stage the crime scene to mislead and delay the discovery of the bodies. The crime scene not only reflected extreme brutality, but also meticulous planning. Through information from the victim's family, police learned that besides the couple, their 17-year-old granddaughter, Cassie Bjorga, also lived with them. However, she was not at home, and no one could contact her. This made the case even more complicated. Neighbors provided surprising information. Before Wendy and Randall were discovered dead, their house often hosted parties. On many nights, loud music, laughter, and flashing lights went on until late. Food delivery workers continued to deliver to the house. Each time, Cassie came out to receive the food, showing no signs of anything unusual. This immediately led investigators to hypothesize: did the perpetrator live with the victims' bodies for several days and force Cassie to stay? The sealing of the house with caulking materials to block the odor suggests this theory is not entirely unreasonable. However, the puzzling aspect was that Cassie, the granddaughter of the victims, was also missing. Could she have been a victim abducted by the perpetrator? But if she was taken, why was there no ransom demand sent to the family? This made the police suspect Cassie's role in the case. Another major question arose. The family car was also missing from the crime scene. Where had the car gone? Did the perpetrator use it to escape? To clarify all theories, the investigation now focused on Cassie Bjorg. Police actively pursued all leads to determine Cassie's current whereabouts, but every clue led to a dead end. Cassie seems to have vanished into thin air, causing the investigation to stall. While focusing on the relationships between the victims and their granddaughter Cassie, a new reported conflict led the police to realize a direct connection to Wendy and Randall's murder case. The incident occurred at the home of Mindy, Johnny Ryder's sister. Mindy discovered her room had been rummaged through and suspected it was her brother Johnny's doing. The two had a heated confrontation. Johnny and his girlfriend attacked Mindy and her boyfriend, Kevin, with a baseball bat and pepper spray. The violent altercation left both victims injured. Mindy immediately reported the attack to the police. After the attack, Johnny and his girlfriend fled the scene, leaving behind a Mazda Tribute in the garage. This became the first crucial lead linking this incident to the murder of Wendy and Randall. When police arrived at the scene, they discovered through the license plate that the Mazda Tribute was registered to Randall Bjorg, one of the victims in the previous case. This indicated a connection between Johnny and his girlfriend to the deaths of the two victims. Reviewing surveillance footage from the garage, police identified Johnny's girlfriend as none other than Cassie, the missing granddaughter from the Wendy and Randall Bjorg case. Cassie and Johnny were not only linked to Wendy and Randall's deaths, but were likely the primary perpetrators. The discovery of the car was the key to opening a new investigative direction and increased pressure on law enforcement. They worked tirelessly day and night, focusing on analyzing Wendy's phone data to track Cassie and Johnny. Through phone signals, they discovered that Cassie and Johnny were hiding in an apartment in Suwanee, Georgia, at 818 McGinnis Ferry Road. On April 9, 2017, police launched a large-scale raid with the support of a SWAT team. The operation was conducted early in the morning to ensure the element of surprise and minimize risks to nearby residents. The SWAT team surrounded the apartment, using a loudspeaker to demand that Cassie and Johnny come out. Outside the apartment, a curious crowd gathered, while police heightened security to prevent any risks. After hours of no response, the SWAT team decided to break into the apartment. They used a robot to assess the situation inside and found Cassie and Johnny in the bathroom, attempting to slit their wrists to commit suicide. The SWAT team broke down the bathroom door and quickly subdued Cassie and Johnny. Both were found lying on the floor, surrounded by blood from their self-inflicted wounds, which were not life-threatening. Medical staff immediately provided first aid at the scene before transferring them to a local medical center. After receiving medical care, both were quickly taken for interrogation. Due to their young age, the police did not take long to get Cassie and Johnny to confess. Cassie admitted to being the mastermind of the case. She stated that she could no longer endure her grandparents' strict control. Johnny carried out most of the violent acts. He directly assaulted and murdered Wendy and Randall, while Cassie assisted by tying their hands and cleaning up the crime scene. Cassie and Johnny, both mentally unstable and influenced by the movie Bonnie and Clyde, began fantasizing about a romantic crime lifestyle. This film depicted a rebellious couple against society, inspiring them to experience the thrill of breaking free and living outside the law. Family conflicts between Cassie and her grandparents, Wendy and Randall, were identified as the main cause of the incident. Cassie felt suffocated by their strict supervision. Wendy and Randall, though loving, could not control her rebellious behavior. Cassie recounted during interrogation that on March 31, 2017, she met Johnny at Peachtree Ridge Park. They sat on a bench, sharing their life pressures. Johnny asked, "Are you afraid of dying?" Cassie replied, "No." This was when the idea of killing her grandparents emerged. Cassie devised a detailed plan. They would kill Wendy and Randall, steal money from their safe, and flee to Florida. Johnny not only agreed but also contributed ideas, such as how to tie up the victims and use duct tape to muffle their cries for help. On April 1, 2017, after waiting for her grandparents to fall asleep, Cassie unlocked the back door and silently let Johnny into the house. They brought a bag containing gloves, duct tape, knives, and a tire iron. Johnny went to Randall's room, while Cassie entered Wendy's room. Randall was struck on the head with the tire iron, while Wendy was tied up tightly by Cassie using duct tape. Wendy screamed and struggled, but Cassie coldly wrapped duct tape around her mouth and head. Johnny then helped Cassie, and together they restrained Wendy before stabbing her multiple times in the chest and neck. Randall was also murdered in a similar fashion, with over 20 stab wounds on his body. After killing her grandparents, the two began searching the house for money and valuables. They opened the safe in Wendy's bedroom, taking around $1,000 in cash and some jewelry. To cover up their crime, Johnny and Cassie sealed the rooms with caulking materials and poured bleach on the bodies to reduce the odor. They also used duct tape to seal the front door, creating the impression that nothing was amiss inside the house. The next day, Cassie began inviting friends over to party at her grandparents' house. Neither of them showed any remorse, and instead saw this as part of their escape plan. Johnny smoked weed and drank alcohol with Cassie in the living room. They even recorded videos of these moments. Days passed, and Cassie and Johnny continued living in the house with the decomposing bodies upstairs. Cassie also used her grandmother's phone to talk to relatives, pretending they were still alive. When the money from the safe ran out, the pair decided to flee Lawrenceville. Johnny suggested using her grandparents' Mazda Tribute to avoid detection, but this inadvertently provided a crucial lead for the police. While on the run, Cassie and Johnny frequently discussed how to continue living as outlaws. They still dreamed of becoming a modern version of Bonnie and Clyde, despite having committed a horrifying crime. When surrounded by police at the apartment in Suwanee, both felt they had no way out. In their final moments, Johnny and Cassie decided to commit suicide to die together. They used knives to cut their wrists in the bathroom, but the police intervened in time. Interrogations after their arrest revealed the entire plan and motives behind the crime. Cassie and Johnny not only confessed to all their actions, but also appeared indifferent to the victims' suffering. In June 2017, Cassie Bjorg and Johnny Ryder were officially charged in court with serious offenses. The first charge was 2 counts of first-degree murder, directly tied to the deaths of Wendy and Randall Bjorg. The brutal wounds on their bodies demonstrated premeditation and extreme violence. 6 counts of aggravated assault were brought against them for the attack on Mindy and Kevin. Using a baseball bat and pepper spray, they inflicted severe injuries, leaving lasting trauma for the surviving victims. Both were also charged with armed robbery. They had stolen cash and valuables from Wendy and Randall's safe, and their use of the Mazda Tribute for their escape further highlighted the severity of their crimes. Johnny Ryder, 19 years old, faced the death penalty as he was considered an adult under the law. During the hearings, Johnny appeared anxious, trying to justify his actions but unable to change the outcome. Cassie Bjorg, only 17 at the time, avoided the death penalty due to juvenile protections. However, her cold and indifferent attitude shocked everyone. While awaiting trial, the two were held in separate detention facilities. Police and lawyers worked tirelessly to ensure all evidence was presented clearly in court. In 2018, to avoid the death penalty, Cassie and Johnny both pleaded guilty to all charges. This was considered their only option to reduce Johnny's sentence, although it did little to appease public outrage. The court sentenced them to 2 life sentences without parole for 60 years. If they survived that time, they could seek parole in their late 70s. The harsh sentences reflected society's anger at their actions. During the sentencing hearing, Johnny Ryder said, "I want to express my deepest apologies to the family. I am very sorry for the pain and loss I have caused." However, his words could not erase the horrors he committed. Cassie Bjorg refused to speak in court. She only bowed her head, shedding superficial tears, without showing any genuine remorse. The case was a massive shock to the community. The perpetrator's lack of remorse and the cruelty of their acts left an indelible mark. The image of a modern-day Bonnie and Clyde was not the romance they imagined, but pure criminality. The case served as a wake-up call about broken family relationships and the dire consequences of failing to address psychological instability in teenagers. Wendy and Randall's family held a touching memorial to honor them. The loss of these two beloved individuals left an irreplaceable void for those who loved them. Wendy and Randall's story is not just a family tragedy, but also a powerful lesson about love and responsibility. Those left behind will always remember them as symbols of kindness and resilience. This video concludes here. Thank you for following this gripping story. If you found this video compelling, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to avoid missing more fascinating stories. Alyssa Burkett, a single mother brutally murdered by her ex-husband over a custody battle. The murderer not only used a gun to execute the plan, but also cruelly inflicted multiple stab wounds on his former wife to ensure she would die. The initial evidence revealed a tangled story. Tracking devices, a fake 911 call, and a plot months in the making. This was a carefully calculated plan. There was not just one perpetrator. Behind him was a cunning lover pulling the strings. She was the mastermind who instigated the entire series of events. You are watching a true story. Let's uncover the dark secrets and gripping details you've never heard before. Don't forget to like and subscribe to join us in exploring today's story. The crime took place in the suburban area of Carrollton, located in northern Texas. This area is known not only for its rapid development, but also for its harmonious natural beauty. Green parks and bustling shopping centers make life here both comfortable and modern. But when the incident occurred, the peaceful suburb of Carrollton became the focus of national attention, shaking the entire United States. It was October 2nd, 2020, and the atmosphere at the Green Tree Apartments parking lot was as quiet as usual. Alyssa parked her car, preparing to head to her office. As Alyssa stopped her car, a black SUV sped towards her and halted right next to her vehicle. Without warning, the SUV door swung open, and a man jumped out, holding a loaded gun. Before Alyssa could comprehend what was happening, the man pointed the gun directly at her and pulled the trigger. The bullet pierced the windshield, cutting into the left side of her face. Blood began to pour out, soaking the car seat. She panicked and screamed, but tried to stay conscious. Outside, some of Alyssa's colleagues witnessed the entire incident. However, due to the assailant's aggression, no one dared approach, thinking it was a mass shooting. After being hit by multiple gunshots, Alyssa staggered out of the car, trying to escape and seek help. The attacker didn't let her get away. He pulled out a knife he had prepared, rushed at her, pinned her to the ground, and began stabbing her repeatedly. When Alyssa was completely motionless, he returned to the SUV, got in, and quickly drove off, leaving behind a horrific scene. Alyssa's colleagues, trembling, called 911, stammering, "Someone's been killed. Parking lot, Green Tree Apartments, please come quickly." Less than 10 minutes later, Carrollton police arrived at the scene, and paramedics swiftly began attempting to save Alyssa. However, it was too late. Alyssa didn't survive. During the autopsy, the medical examiner recorded 44 wounds on Alyssa's body, including deep cuts to her chest, neck, and arms. The fatal injury was a deep stab wound near her heart. Her face was partially disfigured due to bullet wounds and shattered glass from the car. Police searched the handbag that had fallen near Alyssa's body. Inside, they found an ID card and several personal documents, all belonging to Alyssa Burkett, a 24-year-old assistant property manager. Additionally, while inspecting the scene, they discovered a small GPS tracking device attached under her car, near the front right wheel. The discovery of the GPS tracker led police to believe the attacker had been monitoring Alyssa beforehand and meticulously planning the ambush at her workplace. The entire attack was captured by parking lot security cameras, and numerous witnesses saw it happen directly. These witnesses provided information about the black SUV that left the scene immediately after the attack. Some mentioned the attacker's figure, but couldn't clearly see his face. They vaguely described him as a tall, bearded black man, approximately 1.8 meters tall. However, none of them knew him or had seen him before. It was unclear why he could kill the victim so ruthlessly. However, the use of a gun and a knife, as well as the tracking device on her car, made the police conclude that the killer had planned this from the start. Alyssa grew up in a family with 2 sisters in Oklahoma. Her challenging childhood taught Alyssa to mature early. After graduating from high school, she moved to Texas to seek better opportunities. With her strong personality and optimism, she continually strived to rise despite many challenges. There, Alyssa met Andrew Beard through a dating app. At that time, she was 22 years old, exploring herself and enjoying her youth. Andrew was 9 years older than Alyssa. He had a stable job at a manufacturing company, owned a luxurious mansion, and even had a private airplane. Andrew's financial stability and mature demeanor captivated Alyssa. However, their relationship was not serious from the start. Alyssa wanted to focus on her career and enjoy life, while Andrew seemed to seek something more long-term. Everything changed when Alyssa discovered she was pregnant. She had to give up many personal plans to enter married life. On July 23, 2019, Alyssa gave birth to her first daughter, Willow. Both she and Andrew devoted themselves to caring for their child. However, the age gap led to increasingly divergent perspectives on life. Things escalated when Alyssa discovered Andrew's infidelity. He often secretly texted other women. The result was their separation, and Andrew began demanding full custody of their daughter. Alyssa vehemently opposed this. She felt that Andrew didn't genuinely care for Willow and only wanted custody to control her life. The two entered a prolonged legal battle. Alyssa was repeatedly drawn into court hearings over custody disputes, which not only caused her emotional strain, but also drained her financially. Meanwhile, Andrew, with his financial advantage, used every resource available to strengthen his position. He hired top lawyers and prepared evidence to prove he was better suited to raise Willow. By the time of Alyssa's death, the custody battle had yet to be resolved. Initially, the police focused on investigating Alyssa's relationships. Regarding her friends and colleagues, the police gathered information and conducted private interviews with many people, but found no evidence of animosity towards her. Her colleagues were shocked by the incident. They described Alyssa as a sociable and energetic person. She was the kind of person everyone loved. Working with Alyssa was always a pleasure. She always tried to help those around her. Other than frequently hearing her talk about the prolonged custody battle, no one noticed anything unusual. Alyssa had also revealed that her ex-husband had threatened her. If she didn't stop fighting for Willow, she would face serious consequences. But Alyssa didn't pay much attention to this. She was confident that Willow would eventually live with her, rather than with her unfaithful father. Expanding their investigation, the police discovered that a month before her murder, Alyssa had been falsely accused of drug trafficking. The police received an anonymous call reporting that someone was selling illegal substances. Initially skeptical, they became intrigued when the caller provided Alyssa's exact name, age, address, and workplace. Following the tip, the police planned a surprise search on Alyssa when she arrived at a shopping center. Upon opening her car trunk, police found a small amount of drugs, a handgun, and some cash. Alyssa completely denied any knowledge of these items, insisting that she had been set up. The police spent considerable time resolving the case. The evidence recovered from the car had no fingerprints belonging to Alyssa. Blood tests confirmed that Alyssa was negative for drugs. After weeks of verification, there was no reason to believe Alyssa was involved in drug trafficking. The anonymous call was undoubtedly from someone trying to frame Alyssa. The police investigated the call, but the person behind it had disappeared. Alyssa later told her mother, Teresa, about the incident. "Mom, I think Andrew is behind this," she said over the phone. "He will do anything to get custody of Willow, even frame me." Teresa advised Alyssa to report the incident to her lawyer, but Alyssa felt helpless. "Mom, I don't know what to do anymore. I don't have enough money to fight him. I just want to protect Willow," she said in despair. This incident not only harmed Alyssa's mental health, but also affected her work. Shortly after the case was publicized, Alyssa's family immediately suspected Andrew Beard. Her mother, Teresa, tearfully told the police, "I have no doubt. It must be Andrew. She was always afraid he would do something terrible." Madison, Alyssa's younger sister, also shared, "She once texted me saying Andrew was a dangerous person. She believed he could hire someone to kill her to gain custody of Willow." Alyssa's ex-husband, Andrew, became the prime suspect. The police quickly summoned Andrew Beard for questioning. Upon hearing that his ex-wife had been murdered, Andrew seemed surprised but remained unusually calm. He claimed that he was home all morning on October 2nd. However, Andrew's calmness was shattered when police reviewed security camera footage near his house. A video recorded on the morning of the incident showed Andrew walking home at 9:45 a.m., just about an hour after the attack occurred. This made it clear that Andrew had lied. The camera's timeline matched the time the black SUV described by witnesses left the crime scene. However, the police didn't confront him immediately. That same day, they found a black SUV abandoned less than a mile from Andrew's house. The vehicle matched the descriptions provided by witnesses and cameras. Upon closely inspecting the SUV, officers discovered several suspicious details. First, they confirmed the vehicle had been purchased recently, and its owner was Andrew Beard. The SUV was purchased with cash, a common tactic in criminal cases to avoid leaving a financial trail. When they opened the SUV, a strong smell of blood filled the air. Inside, the forensics team found small blood stains on the driver's seat and floor mat. DNA analysis confirmed the blood belonged to Alyssa Burkett. Additionally, several unusual items were found in the SUV. In the trunk, police discovered a fake beard, a bottle of dark foundation, and some men's clothing stained with blood. The fake beard matched the initial descriptions from witnesses who stated the attacker had a thick beard and a dark complexion. The dark foundation was a crucial clue. It confirmed that the perpetrator was not black, but used makeup to mislead the police. Police also found an empty knife sheath inside the SUV, further suggesting this was the vehicle used in Alyssa's attack. Connecting the evidence painted an increasingly clear picture. Police theorized that Andrew had planned Alyssa's attack well in advance. Purchasing the SUV with cash, using disguises, and abandoning the vehicle near his house were deliberate actions to mislead investigators. Andrew was summoned for a second round of questioning, this time with concrete evidence presented. He continued to deny all accusations. Initially, he denied owning the SUV, but police had already investigated and confirmed his purchase before asking the question. His answer only served to validate investigators' suspicions. After some back and forth, Andrew finally admitted the SUV was his, but maintained that he was being framed and had no involvement in the incident. Andrew's behavior grew increasingly contradictory. One officer remarked, "Why did he buy this SUV right before the crime? Why was it abandoned near his house? And why was the victim's blood in the car?" At this point, Andrew knew he couldn't escape. He lowered his head and confessed to the crime. "I'm the one who killed Alyssa Burkett." A search of the perpetrator's mansion revealed a GPS tracker connected to the device found under Alyssa's car. Additionally, they found a script for the anonymous call framing Alyssa a month earlier. The anonymous caller was Andrew himself. Despite confessing, he insisted he acted alone. However, text messages between Andrew and his fiancée Holly Elkins revealed otherwise. Holly Elkins was the woman Andrew had been having an affair with while still living with Alyssa. She was the one who convinced Andrew to fight for custody. Holly was obsessed with creating a perfect family. She believed that only by having Willow could she achieve her dream of a perfect household. Holly had meticulously planned everything 2 months prior, from framing Alyssa for drug dealing to orchestrating her murder. Everything was Holly's idea, and Andrew played the role of executor, blindly following his lover's plans. During the prolonged legal battle, Holly instructed Andrew to tarnish Alyssa's reputation to gain an advantage in the custody fight. The attempt to frame Alyssa failed, so Holly decided that the only solution was to make Alyssa disappear. From this point, everything, from GPS tracking to purchasing weapons and disguises for the murder, was orchestrated by Holly. Part of the plan was communicated by Holly through text messages to Andrew. Even after he informed her that he had killed Alyssa, Holly instructed him to abandon the car to mislead investigators. At this stage, the entire picture of the crime became clear. While Andrew was in custody, Holly Elkins fled Texas and moved to Michigan. She tried to cut all ties to the case and build a new life. However, her actions did not escape the FBI's watch. In July 2023, after nearly 3 years on the run, Holly was arrested at Miami International Airport as she returned from the Dominican Republic. This marked a significant turning point in prosecuting her as an accomplice. While being escorted, Holly remained silent, refusing to answer any police questions. Andrew Beard was tried in early 2023. In court, he confessed to the murder, claiming that killing Alyssa was to end her suffering in life. The judge ruled that Andrew's reasoning could not justify his heinous actions. He was sentenced to 43 years in prison for murder. Meanwhile, Holly Elkins was tried in April 2024. Evidence, including text messages, GPS devices, and Andrew's testimony, proved that she was the mastermind behind Alyssa's murder. The prosecutor described Holly before the jury. She was not just an accomplice. Holly was the puppeteer, the one who planned and pushed Andrew to commit the murder. She wanted control over everything and would stop at nothing to achieve her goals. Text messages between Holly and Andrew were presented in court, showing that Holly had instructed Andrew to resolve everything, and even asked him to recount the details of the murder to satisfy her curiosity. After a week-long trial, Holly Elkins was sentenced to 2 life sentences for conspiracy, stalking, and using weapons that led to Alyssa's death. Andrew and Holly, the 2 co-conspirators, will now spend the rest of their lives in prison. No matter how perfect the crime seemed, justice was ultimately served. Willow will grow up without the love of her parents, but at least she will be far from her father's toxic influence. This video concludes here. Thank you for following this thrilling story. If you found the video captivating, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to not miss any future stories. In March 2016, in Anhui, China, 2 workers dredging a canal in Jiaogan Lake unexpectedly discovered a decayed human skeleton wrapped in an old fishing net. The police quickly arrived and confirmed it was a murder case, not a regular accident. The skeleton had been submerged for years, erasing almost all evidence. Identifying the victim and the cause of death became extremely challenging. The limited clues made the case immensely difficult from the very start. You are following a true story. Join us as we uncover dark secrets, thrilling details you've never heard before. Don't forget to like and subscribe to explore today's story with us. The story is set at Jiaogan Lake, nestled among undulating mountains in Huainan City, Anhui Province, China. This place is a blend of pristine natural beauty and the tranquil charm of a traditional countryside village. But hidden beneath this serene beauty and development are mysterious stories buried in the shadows. The incident began on March 17, 2016, a regular Thursday morning at Dingjia Bridge, where a canal connects Jiaogan Lake and the Huai River. Mr. Liu, over 60 years old, along with a worker named Wang, started dredging the mud early in the morning. During their work, they pulled up an old fishing net, but inside was not just mud and debris. It contained a human skeleton, tightly bound in nylon cords. Shocked and frightened, Mr. Liu quickly called the police. Investigators from Huainan City Police Department were deployed to the scene. At the scene, the skeleton was retrieved from the net. Evidence including nylon cords, 6 stones, a lighter, and tattered clothing was collected. Upon examination, forensic doctors identified the skeleton as belonging to a man approximately 1.65 meters tall, aged between 40 and 50. They estimated the victim had been dead for at least 2 years, but not more than 10 years. The body was tightly wrapped in a fishing net and weighed down in the lake with stones, ruling out suicide. This was clearly a staged murder. The initial investigation faced numerous challenges, as the body had completely decomposed. The exact cause of death could not be determined, nor was it clear if the site where the body was found was the original crime scene. This was a rare, serious murder case in Huainan City. A special task force was immediately established, including experienced investigators from multiple units. Based on the evidence, the police hypothesized that the murder occurred between 2 and 10 years earlier. The task force began following leads, investigating the Dingja Bridge area and Jiaogang Lake's activity history during that period. Investigators discovered that the Dingja Bridge area, where the body was found, had never been dredged or drained before. This raised suspicions that the crime occurred long ago, though the exact timing was uncertain. Traces at the scene were nearly erased by time. Investigators were left with only a few pieces of evidence: a dark green fishing net, 6 large stones, and 6 pieces of clothing. An old lighter was found in the victim's pocket, but no identification documents were present. The victim was deemed an anonymous skeleton. Police compared DNA from the bones and teeth to the missing persons database but found no matches. This was unsurprising if the victim had not previously been involved in criminal cases or reported missing. Huainan City, a major industrial and energy hub, has a population in the millions. Identifying the victim in a short time was an enormous challenge for the task force. To gather clues quickly, police posted notices in all areas around Jiaogan Lake and disseminated information through local media. Images of the skeleton and evidence were made public, urging residents to provide information. But weeks passed without any useful leads. During this time, the forensic team continued to work diligently and uncovered a critical detail. The victim's upper limbs were longer than the lower limbs. This feature is common among fishermen due to habits of rowing and fishing, suggesting the victim was likely a fisherman at Jiaogang Lake. However, the area was home to over 2,000 residents living on boats, dispersed across the lake, and dividing fishing areas like farmers dividing fields. Many had limited interaction with neighbors, restricting the flow of information. After more than 10 days of fruitless investigation, with no missing person matching the victim, the task force entered a state of extreme tension. An emergency meeting was held. At this point, the police decided to bring in a renowned facial reconstruction expert from the Anhui Provincial Criminal Investigation Bureau. Using anatomical knowledge and expertise, the specialist meticulously measured the length and width of the face, cheekbone protrusion, and jaw angles. These parameters shaped the unique facial characteristics, allowing the victim's appearance to be reconstructed. Finally, after 2 days of work, a complete facial reconstruction was finished. A middle-aged face emerged with distinct features: deep-set eyes, a straight nose, and a strong jawline. The task force divided into teams and brought the reconstructed portrait to various areas around Jiaogan Lake. Investigators continued to visit fishing families, using the portrait alongside evidence like the lighter, clothing, and fishing net to find connections. Meanwhile, the portrait was widely publicized through local TV stations and social media. An unprecedented search began, sparking hope that someone might recognize the face. Simultaneously, with limited information, investigators revisited and analyzed the collected evidence. Through analysis, the dark green net was identified as a common type used at Jiaogan Lake, primarily for aquaculture. It could easily be purchased at local fishing supply stores. The 6 stones inside the net were not unique. They were typical stones used to reinforce the lake's embankments. This narrowed the possibility of tracing the perpetrator through conventional evidence. However, when analyzing the lighter found in the victim's pocket, investigators discovered something surprising. It was an early model lighter produced by a local factory that had shut down over 15 years ago. The victim's 6 pieces of clothing, including a blue tracksuit with white stripes, had also been discontinued 15 years earlier. Based on this data, the task force deduced that the murder likely occurred 10 to 15 years ago, extending the time frame initially considered. This forced them to expand their investigation to include missing persons from that period. By this time, the facial reconstruction yielded results. When questioned, some elderly locals remarked that the face in the portrait looked familiar, though they hadn't seen the person in a long time. One resident said, "If he were still alive, he'd probably be over 60 now. But I can't recall much. He might have lived in this area a long time ago." During further investigation, police approached a local community official who provided crucial information. According to the official, a man named Liu Shi had lived near Jiaogan Lake, but had disappeared approximately 15 years ago. Liu Shi was an orphan, adopted by a fisherman as a child. He made his living through aquaculture on a large area of ponds left by his adoptive father. He married and had 2 children. However, everything changed after his wife passed away in the late 1990s, leaving him to raise his children alone. According to accounts, Liu Shi faced significant financial difficulties. A series of failed ventures left him deeply in debt. Around 2000, he suddenly vanished, and no one knew where he went. Locals recounted that his 2 children, losing their family's main support, had to drop out of school and fend for themselves. Some speculated that Liu Shi fled to avoid creditors, but it was only conjecture. Later, the 2 children occasionally searched for their father, but when they found no trace, they eventually gave up. The task force quickly located Liu Shi's 2 children, now grown. They provided an old photo of their father, and the resemblance between the photo and the reconstructed portrait stunned everyone. To confirm, police collected DNA samples from Liu Shi's children and compared them to the skeleton. Days later, the results confirmed the skeleton belonged to Liu Shi. Identifying the victim as Liu Shi marked a significant breakthrough. However, the next question arose: who killed him, and why was his body submerged at the lake bottom for 16 years? The task force focused on Liu Shi's past, particularly the final years of his life. They reviewed his social connections, including friends, neighbors, and those who had disputes or were involved in aquaculture with him. Experienced fishermen in the area provided additional details. If it's Liu Shi, I knew him before. He owed a lot of money due to failed ventures. Another person recounted, Liu Shi wasn't a bad person, but he could be hot-tempered. I remember him arguing with someone in the same trade, and they even fought at the docks. The investigation narrowed down individuals who had serious conflicts with Liu Shi. 3 names stood out: Chu Dayan, Zhao Rucheng, and Liu Xuanmei. All 3 had lived near Jiaogang Lake when Liu Shi disappeared. A common thread was that all 3 were fishermen and had left Jiaogang Lake shortly after Liu Shi's disappearance. Furthermore, the body's location was in one of the lake's deepest areas, only accessible by boat, indicating that the perpetrators were likely fishermen familiar with the area. To gather further evidence, the task force secretly monitored the 3 suspects. They observed suspicious behavior, such as Liu Xuanmei frequently meeting former fishermen in the region, seemingly to probe for information. Police held a closed-door meeting to analyze the suspects' actions. One investigator raised the possibility: if all 3 are connected, could they have collaborated on this crime? Considering the victim's height and weight, approximately 80 kilograms, plus the 6 large stones adding more than 150 kilograms, it would have been difficult for one person to dispose of the body alone. A plan was devised to interrogate each suspect secretly to prevent information leaks. Police decided to use evidence from witnesses as psychological leverage. The investigation began to reveal close connections between the suspects and the victim. Dark secrets and conflicts buried for 16 years were on the brink of exposure. When police interrogated the 3 main suspects, Liu Xuanmei, Chu Dayan, and Zhao Rucheng, their responses surprised everyone. They claimed to have had a good relationship with Liu Shi, with no disputes or conflicts. They described Liu Shi as being well-liked by everyone. Liu Xuanmei even said, "He was such a friendly person, loved by everyone. I don't understand how he disappeared." These statements were completely contrary to the evidence police had gathered. Police suspected this was a deliberate cover-up. With indirect evidence from witnesses, testimonies, and the suspects' departures from the lake area, police identified them as the main suspects. On the evening of March 21, 2016, 3 investigation teams acted simultaneously. Liu Xuanmei was arrested on his family's fishing boat in Nantong, Jiangsu. Chu Dayan was arrested at the restaurant where he worked in Huainan. Zhao Rucheng was arrested while driving a speedboat at the Jiaogang Lake tourist dock. After the 3 were arrested, police conducted separate interrogations. Sessions were recorded and filmed as legal evidence. Psychological pressure began to take effect. Liu Xuanmei was the first to confess. He admitted that he, Chu Dayan, and Zhao Rucheng collaborated to murder Liu Shi in 2000. All 3 suspects provided consistent statements about the time, location, and method of the crime. They revealed that Huang Zhiju, another local fisherman, initially proposed killing Liu Shi to teach him a lesson. According to their testimonies, Huang Jiju was furious because Liu Shi frequently harassed his wife. Zhao Rucheng confirmed that his wife had been a victim of similar behavior. Chu Dayan said, "He didn't just do it when I wasn't home. Once he got drunk, barged onto my boat, and harassed my wife in the middle of the night." Liu Shi also borrowed money from all four of them without paying it back. Whenever they brought it up, he would become enraged. Huang Shiju persuaded the other three to join him by exploiting their personal grievances. They devised a plan to lure Liu Shi onto Huang's boat one night in October 2000. When Liu Shi was off guard, all four of them attacked. They held Liu Shi's head underwater until he drowned. They then used a fishing net and stones to submerge his body in the deepest part of Jiaogan Lake. Huang Shiju died in 2007 in a speedboat accident, but before his death, he insisted the group keep the murder a secret. Zhao Rucheng admitted, "I haven't had a single peaceful night's sleep since then. Every time I close my eyes, I see his face." Chu Dan said, "I know we were wrong, but back then, hatred blinded us all." Their confessions matched the evidence collected by police. The fishing net had knots characteristic of local fishermen, and other items aligned with their statements. With this, the complete picture of the crime was clearly established. After the investigation was completed, the case was brought to trial at the Huainan People's Court. The trial attracted significant attention from the media and the public, as this was the most severe case in the region in many years. At the trial, the three suspects, Liu Xuanmei, Chu Dayan, and Zhao Rucheng, were charged with organized murder, deliberate concealment of the body, and covering up the crime for 16 years. After considering all evidence and testimonies, the court sentenced Liu Xuanmei, Chu Dayan, and Zhao Rucheng to suspended death sentences, commuted to life imprisonment after the initial period, for organized murder. The trial concluded, but debates in the public continued. Some felt the suspects deserved harsher punishment, while others believed their actions were partly influenced by their circumstances. If Liu Shi hadn't harassed their wives, perhaps this tragedy wouldn't have happened, some argued. The story of Liu Shi and his three killers became a warning for the community. Unchecked hatred can lead to catastrophic consequences. The Jiaogan Lake case was closed, but its lessons on humanity and justice remain everlasting. This video ends here. Thank you for following this thrilling story. If you found it engaging, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more captivating stories.